Happy Pride, motherfuckers. We're back for a special episode.
We are here. It's hot as hell. It's June. It's really disgusting in every part of the country. And I am up to taking 2 to 3 showers a day. How are you, Damian?
I was in LA. The weather there, you know, I am resistant to give it its flowers, but the weather was beautiful. It was like warm and sunny, but also like breezy. So it was like perfect. And now I am back in New York and it is hot and humid and muggy. And the sun is just so strong. And our intern Ronnie, she's a black pit bull with old paws that are damaged, so she can't really be on the blacktop like long. It's V hot, so we have to do very brief walks, and we have to wait for the sun to go down before we can go on a proper walk. But we're hanging in there, and we're so happy to be here for a special episode of You Might Know Her From, here on the regular feed in honor of Pride and in honor of, I guess, how much we love y'all. If you're new to the show, Anne, tell them what they need to know.
Folks, for our original sauce show, You Might Know Her From, here, you're going to get Damian and I, best friends, queer, actress aficionados, talking, shooting the shit about all things pop culture, what we're reading, what we're watching, what we're listening to, what we hate. And also, we talk to a character actress each episode. So we are releasing those monthly. We've been in it for 5 seasons now. You can go back and explore our archives and listen to all of the incredible women that we've spoken to. This month, we released Veronica Cartwright, who is a literal walking legend. And I just want to shout out the fact that Donald Sutherland died. And he has come up a lot recently because we actually watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer earlier last year and did a whole episode about that. And Invasion of the Body Snatchers changed my life when I watched that for a Veronica Cartwright interview. And we talked about Donald Sutherland finally getting a perm for the movie because he put his hair in curlers every morning, and it took a toll apparently, so he eventually did get his hair permed for the film, and he's got those iconic curls.
Was he also in Bob, Carol, Ted, and Alice?
No, that was Elliot Gould, but they were friends. Elliot Gould and Donald Sutherland were friends. I forget who the other guy is in that. But no, he's in that movie. He's in a movie with Julie Harris that I've never seen, where apparently they may be engaging in actual physical intercourse on camera. And I don't remember who directed it. The film folks will probably know and correct the record
Oh, yeah,
for us.
they fucked.
Yeah, they actually maybe fucked. But also I found out that, he was with Jane Fonda for a long time. He was very pro-Palestinian liberation. He was very anti-war. The CIA had him on a watch list because he was such an activist. And he and Jane Fonda did a lot together as a couple to raise money for anti-war efforts. So I just feel like a real strange personality legend. And I think a lot of young people know him from The Hunger Games. Never seen it. But I honestly was introduced to him thanks to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the film, and I am forever grateful.
He was Canadian. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. And it seems like Kiefer is the last kind of child he would have had. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't track to me that Kiefer is Donald's son, but I actually got the news from Kiefer on Twitter, and I was appreciative that he was the one that broke
Do you follow
news.
Kiefer Sutherland on Twitter?
No, I think he was pushed to me because once a year I Google Kiefer Sutherland Christmas tree. And so I think that must be somewhere in my records online. So I don't know if you've seen the video.
Of what? No.
Kiefer Sutherland Christmas tree.
No,
go watch it.
I'm not familiar.
Okay, we'll put it in the show notes. Sorry to be talking about a man so early in
She
this
loves
episode.
men. This is a thing that is it seems antithetical to who Anne Rodeman is, but she loves men, and we had this joke about her a laundry list of men and how I'm always men she cares about. It just keeps growing and growing. And I mean, it's Gene Hackman, it's Dabney Coleman, now it's Donald Sutherland.
I didn't know he was on the list.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
John Travolta.
John Travolta's on your list too, to be fair. He's you have a much shorter list of men, and yours is basically John Travolta and Adrian Zmed for obvious reasons.
Yes, the Grease, Christopher McDonald as well, who's also on Hacks, and I love seeing him on Hacks because
so
he's a
good
true
on that.
character actor. Yeah.
Truly. We'll probably never do You Might Know Him From because Lord knows we don't care enough, but Christopher McDonald will be top of the list.
It's so funny you say that because I actually just created a doc the other night that is called in our shared Gmail that is You Might Know Him From, because I was there are just a few men whose names are not at the tip of my tongue that I never want to forget if we ever do it, because They're in everything. They're sort of like the Celia Weston, Beth Grant, like Dale Dickey version of like they're really utility actors in millions of things. And Christopher McDonald is 100% one of those men.
Let's talk about how good Hacks is this season. I just feel like the show has really hit its stride and figured out that the thing, I think they figured out last season 2, that the thing the audience wanted was Deborah and Eva like together. That's what we wanted. We wanted to just see their dynamic. So we got rid of a lot of the tertiary stuff and now we're like digging deep on the two of them. And I think it's great and very funny and very weird and specific. And I'm just so happy for Jean Smart. I couldn't be happier that now she is on the tip of other people's tongues since she's been on mine for years.
I'm so happy for her. You know, we've been big fans of hers forever. I loved her on Designing Women, of course, but also, you know, like the Brady Bunch movie, you know, she has like that great cameo as the neighbor who's like a, you know, like a lady who's like drunk. I just love her. She is incredible.
I also have to say, I think that Hannah Einbinder has gotten very good. And I don't know if it's like working with Jean Smart or like I was not necessarily sold on her in the first season for whatever reason, but I really think that she has come into her own and is so good. And she also just shouted out the WNBA in her comedy special. So I love her. I think her politics are great. I think she's a badass. And who would have guessed that she's Lorraine Newman's daughter? It's kind of shocking.
I agree.
She's a Nepo baby I can get behind, actually.
Oh boy. I mean, Nepo babies.
Don't get started. I know.
Don't get me started.
I wanted to tell you that I finally watched the Donna Summer documentary on Max last night, and it was so good and devastating in a very particular way. It was sort of created by one of her daughters and her second husband, and I feel like everyone should watch it because I feel like people think of Donna Summer as like the queen of disco, but she had like one of the best voices of the fucking generation and I think I didn't understand that I knew all like 9 or 10 of her hits, you know, just like 10 bangers, banger after banger after banger. And her vocal quality is so stunning. But it also is just sort of like a very behind the scenes look into her personal life and how awkward she was as a star and what it meant to her to sort of balance the personal and the professional, because there were all these home videos from her family that make up the bulk of the content. So I really recommend it. And I regret that I didn't see Donna the musical. I feel like I don't love a jukebox musical, but I would have loved to have seen it because I'm in a Donna Summer, you know?
Are you regretful because you didn't get to see Duckling Donna or Disco Donna as played by Oscar winner Ariana DeBose?
Oh, Damian, I will tell you that I root for her. But I actually can't believe that she's working so much. And I will maybe just leave it at that. Do you have anything to add to that conversation?
I don't. The Tonys were wild this year, and we did chronicle our thoughts about them on the You Might Know Her From newsletter, which you can subscribe to on our Patreon. There are different tiers there to see what's available to you, but it's a way to keep connected with us. We also release special episodes where we do, you know, just us episodes, kind of like this, but a little bit more in depth. Sometimes they're themed. We just recently watched the Poseidon Adventure. Sometimes they're, you know, like mostly just us saying we hate things in our queer and loathing, you know, bi-monthly check-in. Sometimes we do interviews where we interview someone who's not an actor for the main feed, but there's somebody who exists in our mind grapes that we think is appropriate and we think that our listeners would like. And that's part of why we're here for this special episode, because we were able to talk to the great actor and writer and author of the new audio drama, The Queen of 14th Street, Barrie Kreinik.
Barrie wrote this incredible play chronicling sort of the backstage drama of Eva Le Gallienne, who is, I think, best described by Barrie herself as like the queer theater legend you don't know about. It really is a gift this June that Barrie came and chatted with us about this play, which, by the way, is 90 minutes and available on all platforms. You should go download it and listen to it now. Barrie's a voice actor. She does the voice of Eva Le Gallienne, who's sort of a British-born American actor who started the Civic Repertory Theater and really just lived a very queer life in New York City and Connecticut, dated a lot of her actresses, a lot of lesbians whose names you probably will recognize. Damian and I ended up creating a sort of like mini L-word style chart of all of the people that Eva was connected to over the years. She's this incredible raconteur, Renaissance woman. And the fact that we got to dive deep with Barrie on this, who is so well researched, so smart about queer history, New York City history, theater history, and it's this sort of beautiful amalgamation of all of those things. So if you love any of those three or all of those three, this episode is really for you. So as a gift for everybody, we are putting this on the Patreon for free through the end of June 2024. So hop over there to listen to the entire interview if you want. This is going to be just a taste so that you can get to know Barrie and get to know Eva Le Gallienne, Le G as we come to call her, and get into some like really spicy queer history for June. Folks, welcome to this very special episode of You Might Know Her From with none other than actor and author Barrie Kreinik, who just wrote, starred, and published her own audio drama, The Queen of 14th Street, about the theater legend and queer icon Eva Le Gallienne this month. So Barrie, you not only wrote the play, but you star as Le G, as she was known. So Barrie, happy Pride. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
I feel like you really gave us a gift in approaching us about this whole project. So in your own words, can you set up for our listeners who Eva Le Gallienne was?
Absolutely. Eva Le Gallienne was one of the most accomplished theater artists of the 20th century whom you have never heard of. And part of the reason I wrote this play was so that everyone now will have heard of her. She was an actor, a director, a producer, a translator, and a writer, also sometimes a designer. About the only thing that she didn't do in the theater was write plays, interestingly, but she translated the works of Ibsen and Chekhov. She did all sorts of things. She was born in 1899 and lived to the age of 92. She died in 1991. And most importantly for my play, in 1926, when she was 27 years old, she founded the Civic Repertory Theater on West 14th Street in Manhattan, which was one of New York's first nonprofit theater companies. It was arguably the first nonprofit classical repertory theater ever founded in New York, which prefigured the subsequent off-Broadway and regional theater movements by more than 2 decades. And of course, people love to talk about those movements like they just sort of happened and not give her credit for having been the first way before as a woman in a man's world. And also, she was, for all intents and purposes, openly gay at a time when people were not. So she was pretty badass overall.
A total badass. I'm also obsessed with the fact that, you know, and she said this later in life too, that it was important for her to keep ticket prices low. So I think she said like the highest ticket price for any of her shows in rep were $1.50, which is sort of outrageous. At
a time when Broadway was $3.50, which I
Crazy.
mean is unbelievable now. And hilariously, she did a radio interview in 1965 with Studs Terkel that I've listened to many, many times, where she talks about how the Lincoln Center Theater, which had just been established, was charging far too much with a $6 top.
Ugh.
But if you think about it on that scale, it is also wild. And if we were able to just like slash Broadway prices in half right now and say that this is say $50 is the most expensive, you know, theater ticket, then like, wow, that would be a lot more attainable for so many people to be able to enjoy New York theater.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't even know what she would think about the way that ticket prices have exploded nowadays. And I get on my soapbox about this. My friends know this about me, because even nonprofit theater companies now are charging an awful lot of money.
Yeah, it's disgusting. We talk about it sort of ad nauseum, and just like I feel like we have to make tough decisions sometimes. Like, I'm not going to see this, almost like the principle of like, I don't want to see it that bad. And also I'm not going to pay that ticket price for it. It's like in protest. I don't know that anyone cares, but I know for my own, peace of mind.
Oh, absolutely. Me too. I'm like, I don't spend more than $50 on anything unless I absolutely must see it, which is nowadays kind of rare. So.
Completely. We initially, I think this is fair to say, like we initially discovered Eva Le Gallienne when we interviewed Kate Burton, who our listeners know from the theater, but also from Grey's Anatomy and what's the other one? Scandal. And Kate starred in the revival of Alice in Wonderland that Le G, as she was known, adapted and directed initially in 1932, but then again in the 1940s, and then Kate starred in that 1980s revival of it. Where did your interest or even initial knowledge of Le G, like when did that come to you, and what inspired you then to create the piece that is now known as the Queen of 14th Street?
So it all started 17 years ago. Soon after I graduated from college, a lesbian theater artist that I knew asked if I had ever heard of Eva Le Gallienne, and I said no. And she said, I think that her story would be of interest to you. There's a biography out there that you should read. So I went and got the biography, which was written by Helen Sheehy in 1996. And I was floored that after 3 semesters of theater history in college, getting a degree in theater, I had never heard of Eva Le Gallienne, given the depth and breadth of her accomplishments, as well as what I said earlier about her having founded the Civic Rep. I was so taken by her passion for the theater, her belief in it both as an art form and a social necessity. Her multifacetedness. I have always been a writer as well as an actor and a singer, and I've always done lots of different things in the performing arts, and she did as well, and I found that very inspiring. And I was very inspired by the story of her personal life and how open, again, it's sort of in quotes, as open as anyone was about their love life at all back then. She never entered into a lavender marriage. She never pretended to be anyone but who she was. And she had this long series of relationships with women. So that book was unbelievably illuminating. And in the interest of citing my sources, which I believe in, most of the information that I have and will talk to you about Le G comes from Helen's biography. I now know Helen personally. I reached out to her during my research process, and she and I became friends. And the reason that book is so comprehensive is because she was given access by Le Gallienne's estate to all of Le G's documents, the diaries, the letters, scrapbooks, manuscripts, things that had never been published, had never been seen the light of day. Helen was allowed access to all of that stuff, in addition to interviewing dozens of people who knew Le G very, very well. And when she was finished writing that biography, all of that stuff was donated to the Library of Congress. So I've also been to the Library of Congress to look at just the fraction of those materials that I could in a single day. But anyway, that's kind of that biography to me is the sort of Bible of Le Gallienne information, because it is so comprehensive. So that's where it started. And then I sort of filed her away as this incredible inspiration, didn't really think anything at that time about doing anything with the story of her life. And then in 2016, I was cast in a show with the actress Carol Shelley, who most people will know from originating the role of Madame Morrible in Wicked, but had a long and storied career well before that in this country. She was originally from England. And in one of our early conversations, she was talking about this national tour that she went on in 1976 of a play called The Royal Family by Kaufman and Ferber. And she said, and I worked with this wonderful actress called Eva Le Gallienne. And I said, I'm obsessed with Eva Le Gallienne. Tell me everything. So Carol started telling me stories about her and what it was like to work with her and what she was like as an actress. And Carol lent me her signed copy of Le G's first autobiography at 33, which I took home and I sat down on the couch and I got up 4 hours later having read the entire thing from cover to cover. I basically fell in love with Le G's voice, her narrative voice, the way that she wrote her story and expressed all of that passion for the theater that I had read originally in the biography in the third person, but just her words were absolutely captivating. And of course, she didn't write about her love life because that would not have been a thing at that time, but all of her lovers were mentioned in the book because she worked with all of them. So, God, this woman was so incredible. This has to, people need to know about her, and this needs to be a play, because what better way to resurrect her story than through the art form that she loved? So within days, I started researching and writing.
it really is such a gift. And I feel like to have been reintroduced to Legee this month in particular, and to get to listen to your audio drama, and like it tickles everything that Damian and I love, which is like gay drama, historical, behind the scenes drama, like backstage theatrics. I feel like it was so up our alley, and I feel like it's such a gift to be giving Legee to future generations. So thank you for all the work that you did. You talked a little bit about some of the research and the primary resources that you got to. Is there any like record of her in the Lesbian Her Story archives? I assume no, but like, did you peek? Is there any like gay archive that has anything of her? Because I feel like they need to put her on the record in gay archives in New York City as well.
They should. Lesbian Her Story, I reached out to them and they said, although she is mentioned peripherally in a few, clippings, I think they said there's nothing substantive there about her. I think I've never actually been there because I haven't had any research that I've needed to conduct with them. My sense is that their historical record is more recent, that maybe the time at which she was sort of the most famous, which was the 1910s through the 1930s, is not necessarily their kind of wheelhouse.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you say, like, how did you narrow down, you use a framing device in the play. How did you narrow down the time period that you were going to use as a structure for the Queen of 14th Street?
I wanted to cover everything that had been covered in at 33, which was from her earliest beginnings through the end of the civic rep. I felt that was a chapter of her life in and of itself. Everything really changed for her after that, and in a way became a little bit less interesting, both romantically and professionally. Sorry, Legee. But, I mean, she had like 5 more decades of work after that.
Yeah.
But that was the time period I was interested in, and I didn't necessarily want to totally do it chronologically. So it's sort of hard to say because it's been through so many drafts over the years. But with drama, you want there to be conflict and urgency, and there is urgency in, okay, the theater company is failing. I have to try to save it. Yeah. And there's evidence that she did alienate some people who were very close to her at the time in her attempts to do that. And I thought, well, that makes a really good sort of conflict to start us out with. So that is how the play starts, right? It's 1932. They're about to produce Alice in Wonderland, which she believes is the show that's going to save the theater company. And her best friend, former lover and business manager, Mary Duggett Benson, whom she called Mimsy, is like, you're overspending. This is going to sink us. So there you have the conflict. And then the radio interview, which forms the backbone of the play, which is where we get the flashbacks, was my own invention, inspired by that 1965 interview with Studs Terkel that I listened to. So originally, I developed this for the stage. And what happened after 3 years of development was the pandemic, which killed all the momentum that I had been building with a couple of theater companies. So when I went to adapt it, in the stage version, she's writing her autobiography, and that's where we get the flashbacks from. I had to create something that was a little more conducive to audio drama, and I came up with this idea of the radio interview, which just worked really well and flowed really well once I kind of started writing that into it. So what we get is we hear Eva telling these stories to the radio interview, quote unquote, in the present, which is 1932. But in that kind of theatrical device, we go into her mind as she remembers those scenes. And that's where we hear them fleshed out with all of the characters that are in them.
It's really sharp. It's a great listen.
Thank you.
And also you star as Legee. So you mentioned the Studs Terkel interview. There's also the Dick Cavett interview that's on YouTube. That's really great. Obviously, that's much later in her life. But how did you find her voice? Is there audio of her from that era in the 30s that you used as a template?
Yes, the radio interview was, because it's 45 minutes long and it's mostly her rambling the way that I do when I give interviews. That was sort of the source that I kept going back to over and over again. But I got every piece of audio and video I could get my hands on. So there are everything that's on YouTube. I found, including clips from, she did sort of TV theater appearances. I don't remember. I think it was Ford's Theater or something like that. I forget who. I think it was Ford who sponsored those in the 1940s, where she was in plays that were televised. So I watched those, and there's a recording they made of the 1947 production of Alice in Wonderland that they recorded in a studio, which is also, the whole thing is on YouTube. So I listened to that, and she narrates that in addition to playing the White Queen. And I also, because I have a record turntable, I'm not really a collector of things in general, but I got like super nerdy about this and started ordering LPs, like all the LPs that I could find. And I have the complete unabridged recording of her playing Hedda Gabler.
Oh my God.
Which is incredible, as well as Camille, in which she plays the Lady of the Camellias. And listening to those two, I actually just put Camille on this morning just to kind of get back in my head a little bit. You can tell, obviously, that it's the same person, but the way that she uses her voice for characterization, and she was in her 50s when she recorded both of those things, is just stunning. So I fed her voice into my ears as much as possible, particularly in this sort of 6 weeks before we recorded the audio play, and worked very hard on, I mean, I'm a dialect coach. I've been doing accents for my whole life. That's sort of my specialty, but I had never had to imitate a particular person's voice before. So that was a really fun challenge, not only getting her accent, which is a sort of hybrid of old-fashioned RP British and transatlantic American and all that stuff with like some European influences, but also her pitch pattern. And what I discovered finally was how to kind of capture the sound of her voice was that her soft palate is raised. So that's what that very round sort of sound that she just had sort of naturally like that. I can't actually raise my soft palate without automatically going into her voice. But when I drop that, my voice comes out my forehead, right? And I thought, well, so how do you achieve that then without tension, holding, didn't want to be holding it up there and sounding terribly proper like that, because that doesn't really work. But that was all the kind of stuff that I played with in trying to capture her voice. And I, nobody said that I had to, but I personally, when I see any kind of biopic or listen to something that's a true story, I always want to know, what was that person really like? What did they really sound like? So my goal was that if anybody listens to the play and then says, is that how she really sounded? Then they can find a recording of her. And I feel like I have done her justice.
I really hope that you find a way to upload those LPs for the world to hear. That's very cool. I feel sad that they don't do that anymore. It was such a great thing. I remember somebody played me like the Udo Hagen, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And I was like, oh, this is incredible.
Yes.
One of the things Damian and I found in our research was this piece that's about Anne Kaufman Schneider, who is George Kaufman's daughter, who seemed to be
who wrote The Royal Family, which also starred Carol Shelley, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so did you have dealings with her? She seems to be one of the keepers of Le Gallienne's legacy. Did you have dealings with her? Like, what was her situation with Eva?
With Eva, I met Anne. Anne is now in her 90s. I think in failing memory, I don't know how to say that tactfully. Sure. I don't know her super well. I don't know what the situation is.
Sure.
I was connected with her, went to her apartment, met with her. She's delightful. She had some memories of Legee. But I think had I interviewed her 10 or 12 years earlier, it would have probably been a different story.
Right.
Whoever she is, still alive, which is pretty incredible. And she and Le Gallienne had an affair. And Helen interviewed Anne extensively for the biography, and Anne allowed her to publish that information. And I think it was sort of surprising that it wasn't more of a thing when that news came out. But why should it be? I mean, I believe Legee was 78 when they fell in love, and Anne is something like 25 years younger. So when Legee was working on The Royal Family, Anne, because George Kaufman was dead by that point, and Anne was sort of the keeper of his legacy and the rights and all that stuff. So she was involved with that production. And yeah, the two of them fell in love and had a relationship. And I don't know how long the romantic relationship lasted, because Anne never left her husband. They were still together. But Anne remained friends with Le Gallienne for the rest of her life.
I love it. I love the web that Eva Le Gallienne spun. I mean, the woman is like a raconteur and brilliant and so talented, but also like everybody wanted to have a piece of her probably because she was so charming and so clever. And
Yes.
I think like a hot commodity.
Oh yeah. I'm positive that if she and I had been young at the same time, I would have fallen madly in love with her. I mean, just listening to her voice, I'm like, I could listen to you all day long. Keep talking, please.
So, for maybe lack of a better word, she was like a famous lesbian. I mean, I don't know that she identified with that label, and I don't know how out she was, but I think, as you said, sort of out as much as a person could be maybe in that time.
Yes.
And there's a lot of well-documented relationships and alleged, relationships. So for our listeners, I'm just going to give a little bit of a laundry list to set this up. So there's her first love, Mary Mimsy Duggett, who is well documented in your play. Then there's
Sorry, no, I don't mean to interrupt you. I actually,
please interrupt.
Going back to the biography recently, just to make sure that all my facts are right. She did have a brief relationship before Mimsy with an actress called Margaret Maurer. When Eva was 18, I think Margaret was a few years older. There's not a lot about it in the book. I'm not sure there's a lot of information on it. Eva did write about her. She wrote about Margaret a little bit in her diaries, and also Eva had a correspondence with her husband Mogens, who lived in Copenhagen, where Eva's mother was from. And Mogens also was gay, and so the two of them, he and Eva had this correspondence where they were able to speak honestly about the people they loved. And she wrote to him about Margaret, saying she has the most beautiful mouth that I've ever seen in the world, and she's like a princess. It sounded very sort of innocent, but that was sort of her, I think, her first humor. And then that fizzled out at some point, not long after it started. And then, yes, she met Mimsy and they were together for 3 years. Please carry on.
No.
This is good. This is good. We need to
what we want. This is what we want. Okay, so then there's also, and this timeline might be, I think, is all over the way that I wrote it, but writer-director Alla Nazimova, who then, is maybe most famous now in modern days as coining the term sewing circle.
Yes.
There's also writer and famed celesbian of the time, Mercedes de Acosta, who I think that was the woman that Legee described as a succubus, correct?
That was my word for her in my play. Yes, I'm not sure that was the other. That was not one of the verbatim Legee lines. Legee did describe Mercedes later in her life as a professional lesbian.
So I'm obsessed with Mercedes.
I'm obsessed with Mercedes too. Mercedes was not really germane to the topic of my play, so she's not in there very much. But we can definitely talk about Mercedes. To Helen's knowledge, if Legee had an affair with Nazimova, it was very short and happened at a very specific time. They don't appear to have really been romantically involved. Legee worshipped her as an artist. I mean, that's in my play as well. She just was, huge crush, and would go to see the play that she was in every day when Nazimova was playing here in New York. And Nazimova invited her backstage and sort of accepted her adulation. And then when Mimsy, in 1921, when Mimsy married a man while Eva was away on tour, because that was what her family expected of her, Eva was brokenhearted and took Nazimova up on her invitation to visit Nazimova in Hollywood. And she went out there to her house, which she called the Garden of Allah. But it seems as though Eva may have thought that she was going to be able to actually hang out with Nazimova one-on-one, and that didn't really happen. And she was a little disillusioned by what a diva Nazimova was out there in Hollywood. And according to the biography, Eva very quickly had a friend invent an urgent cable from New York summoning her home. Right. So she didn't stay out there very long. So I think the quote is, if the two of them had an affair at that time, it was brief, because that's kind of all the evidence there is for their romantic entanglement. But they remained connected, again, as lesbians do, for the rest of Nazimova's life. You were on
next on
80s.
Yeah. On this laundry list here, we also have scenic designer Gladys Calthrop, who also, in your play, she leaves with Mercedes, which is like they end up together after Eva has had affairs with both of them.
Yes, and I made that wrap up real neatly.
It's so funny.
Yes, thank you, because as I wanted to land that punchline, the two of them had a thing later on. That wasn't actually who Gladys left with, but Gladys did leave with somebody else.
Yes, it's great. It's great dramatic writing and very funny, and also just like very gay.
Yes.
Okay, so Legee also allegedly had a relationship with actress director Margaret Webster, who she also worked with. The aforementioned Anne Kaufman Schneider, who they had some sort of affair. Also, one of her great romances, if not the great romance, with actress Josephine Hutchinson, who was in Son of Frankenstein, had a whole theater career, had a TV career, was on shows like Twilight Zone, and was described as like Legee's shadow, which meant lesbian at the time. And then there seems to be her longtime companion, Marion Gunnar Evanson Westlake, who there isn't a lot of information about on the interweb other than her name. I have more, don't worry. I have more, and then I have more.
Okay.
There's also...
I'll straighten out that timeline for you, yes.
Yes, please. But there's also rumors that she had affairs with Tallulah Bankhead, Beatrice Lilly, who our listeners will probably best know as Mrs. Mears in Thoroughly Modern Millie, the film, and Lorette Taylor, who I have now, again, another person I'm obsessed with now, who is the original Amanda in The Glass Menagerie. She allegedly inspired Noel Coward's Hay Fever and is just held up as one of the great theater actors of the theater ever. So what say you to these rumors? Who do you want to correct me on? And who do you believe was her great love?
With regard to Bankhead, Lilly, and Taylor, I say, show me the receipts. Because there is zero evidence in Le Gallienne's own documents that she had an affair with any of them. It doesn't mean it didn't happen, but she did not write about it. And she wrote pretty exhaustively in her diaries and letters about everyone she was with. So it would be surprising to me if any of those relationships were... I don't know, maybe she hooked up with some of them. I mean, Lorette Taylor seems very unlikely, as to me I don't know anything about Beatrice Lilly, actually. Tallulah Bankhead, that is a rumor that has persisted, and I really want to know what the source of it is. I know that she and Legee knew each other because they both hung out at the Algonquin Hotel back when people were doing that, when that was a sort of artistic literary circle. Yeah. But I read somewhere on the interweb that Legee was Tallulah's first relationship with a woman, but that it does not, for all intents and purposes, none of that is true. But I'm really interested to know where those rumors came from, because somebody started them, so maybe it happened, but there's no evidence for it.
This show is a never-ending gift in that it allows us to meet people over the internet like Barrie, who share our sensibilities, who are bringing us information about queer New York that we were not privy to. And I just felt like the more we talked, the more excited we got with Barrie. And it was like, yeah. And I think that's what we're trying to do here on You Might Know Her From, and that's what we're doing over on the Patreon too. So happy Pride. That was just I feel like everyone should know about Eva Le Gallienne, and I was like, we need to get her in the lesbian history archives. We need to put a plaque up in New York. We need New York to recognize Eva as the legend that she is.
Completely. And I feel like you and I are simpatico. We are bosom friends. So I feel like I always know when we're generally have an idea of when we're both vibing on something. And that was totally the case where I also know when we're not vibing, when we have an actor interview and it's not going great and we're both they hated us. But I felt like chatting with Barrie, we came in with our research and having listened to her audio drama, but we also didn't know a ton about Eva Le Gallienne. And, we love to come to conclusions. We love to draw patterns to things, even if they're not there. But I loved watching us, bristling with the energy and volleying with Barrie. And she was picking up what we were putting down. And she seemed like she was a theater nerd and a person who did all this research to write her audio drama, but also was cool and to the gossip part of it. And I was like, yes, Legee fucked Beatrice Lilly and Lorette Taylor and Tallulah Bankhead. And she was like, it's not substantiated. And I was like, well, I'm going to keep trying to substantiate it because I am interested.
She really was a connector. Legee was a connector of all the lesbians in New York City and beyond. Please go explore the archives. Damian and I can't wait to go and dig in the New York Public Library and watch some of the content that is available of Legee. I just feel like it's our job now to proselytize and push the story of Legee so that everybody knows about it.
100. happy Pride. Let's pour one out for La G. Please check it out on the Patreon. As Anne said, it is free through the end of June 2024 on our Patreon. But we hope you enjoyed this little snippet. We hope that you will go and listen and download Barrie's audio drama, The Queen of 14th Street. It's a play, but it plays in your ears, almost like an old school radio show. It's like a real fun, easy, like an hour and a half listen. It's like easy breezy, moves through a very specific time in La G's life. And you're going to feel like you know this woman, and then you're going to start researching her as you listen on the train, and you're going to be like, wow, like she was openly, like, quote unquote, openly gay at a time when it's just all the things. So you're going to feel all the things, and you're going to be happy for trailblazers like La G, who not only was an icon of the theater, but just by purely existing and being seen was a trailblazer for LGBT folks.
And can I just say, it doesn't end in like gay trauma. None of this is about gay trauma. This is all like gay queer joy. So don't feel like you're gonna like listen to the episode and have it be meeting some tragic end. It really is sort of this like beautiful story of a woman that lived a long, rich life and was like a very open, artistic queer. It's kind of incredible.
Barrie told us that, like if she had to cast someone in the La G story and it wasn't herself, who is an actor, then she had said, talked about Claire Foy. But it's funny because as I was listening to the piece, I kept imagining Cherry Jones, who's not British, but I just imagined her as playing this grand dame of the theater. And then I later was picturing Holland Taylor, who is British, right? She has a regal accent, but I never know if she's British or if she's
No, she's not British, but she does have a regality about her.
Yeah. She's not British, 100%?
Holland Taylor? No.
Holland Taylor.
I think Holland Taylor is maybe born in the South. That might be part of what you're getting at, because Cherry Jones is also a Southerner. I don't know that Holland Taylor was born in the South, but I feel like sometimes Southern women, because they had to go to elocution school and term school, have a particular air about them that Americans might associate with Brits.
Okay, well, Holland is from Philadelphia. I never knew this. Wow. Anyway, this is a real tangent, but imagining that is cool. She probably did go to some sort of debutante. She probably had a fancy upbringing. I'll do more research.
She went to finishing school. Yeah,
exactly.
You've got to get a plaque up for Holland Taylor in Philadelphia. Can you work on that with your family?
I'm on it.
Does she claim Philadelphia? People that are from Philly claim it usually. I need Holland Taylor.
She went to a Quaker boarding school in Westchester, Pennsylvania, which is not far. And then she studied theater at Bennington College, which is in Vermont.
That's the women's. Bennington is fancy women's school. Isn't that where Sylvia Plath went? Did I make that up?
I think
a Bennington girl.
I think that's right. Yeah. But Holland was born in Philadelphia in 1943.
This is huge news. She's back on Broadway, or she's in New York doing a show this summer, so we should try to lock her down.
Do you remember what I know Holland Taylor from is that she was the dean on Saved by the Bell the college years, and I just wanted to say that
Thank you for reminding me.
I knew she was on Bosom Buddies, and I did vaguely have a vague knowledge of that in syndication, but Saved by the Bell the college years was the first thing I remember being but I think in my head I always thought she was British. She has, to me, her accent is so specific.
I knew her from the Taya Leone short-lived sitcom
Naked
Truth. She was very good on that.
Yeah,
but then I think I also knew her from Debs, which I watched secretly, and then recorded it on Logo or something, and then watched it in the privacy of my parents' home at 3 a.m.
We need to interview Angela Robinson to discuss Debs on the Patreon.
100%. Folks, thank you for joining us this Pride. We love you. We hope you're doing well. If you want more of this, you can follow us on social media at Damian Bellino and at Rhodaman. You can also follow the show on TikTok and Instagram at You Might Know Her From. And of course, the Patreon is patreon.com/You Might Know Her From.
You Might Know Her From is produced by us. That's Ann Rhodaman and Damian Bellino. And we also want to thank our consultants at Grumpy Entertainment, Jason Jude Hill and Daniel Sears. And all of that silky smooth editing you hear is also by the wonderful and talented and very appreciated Daniel Sears.
As always, we would like to thank Gang. Every piece of music you hear on You Might Know Her From is courtesy of Gang. They're 3/4 women. They're from what? Holland Taylor's hometown of Philadelphia. And you can find them wherever you listen to your music. And do you need to see that clip of Kiefer Sutherland Christmas Tree? Guess what? It's going in the show notes. If you don't know what it is, look at the bottom of the episode description. It is something I Google once a year, which is how I found out about Donald Sutherland's death. Thank you, Kiefer. R.I.P. to a legend.
Do you want to watch me watch it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to watch it in the M during the tag right now. Ready?
Okay. Yes. Pull it up. Pull it up.
Okay, I'm pulling it.
I have like a soft spot for Kiefer
starting.
because I watched.
Incredible. Did he say you're a pirate? He says, hey, this guy says, like, hey, Kiefer, you're a pirate. Is that what he says?
I'm not sure.
And then Kiefer runs into a Christmas tree. It's incredible.
I think I'm hoping that Kiefer's sober now. I think it was at a different time in his life when he was jumping in public Christmas trees. But
Do you love Kiefer Sutherland? Because I forgot that you loved 24.
24 had the worst politics of any show that's ever been on TV. It's like not only like propaganda, but it's like waterboarding propaganda. It was very like post 9/11, horrible.
Yeah, did you realize that at the time? Like,
torture.
did you connect the dots when you were watching it as a young person?
Yes, I did, but I didn't. It didn't keep me from watching it, which is a problem. Like I know it's a problem, but it was one of those shows that like, and you know, they like killed off people you would have never expected they killed off. I think including children, and you're like, this is cool.
Yeah, like the stakes were high.
Yes, and every episode it was, you know, cliffhanger and whatever. And they actually, you know, Cherry Jones played the president one season. They cast women of import.
Soraya Aghdashley was in it, right?
Yes, she unfortunately played a terrorist, of course, because it was whatever 2006.
Jean Smart was the president, or the president's wife, or something.
Was she what?
Jean Smart was like, I didn't even watch it, Anne. She was like the president or the president's wife or vice president, first lady. Yeah, she was something. Jean Smart won like an Emmy for 24. Oh my God! This woman that I'm talking to, Anne Rodeman, was a fan.
I don't remember her.
She
on
watched
24.
this whole show. I think maybe even watched an episode of the.
Oh yeah. She was the first lady.
Oh boy,
Damian, come on. You know,
you need to take your ginkgo biloba, babe. Your memory's going.
I'm drinking watermelon juice with jalapenos mixed in right now. It's delicious.
Is that supposed to be good for your memory?
Oh, I have no idea, but it's just good for you. It's delicious. It's a very good summery drink. I highly recommend it. Splash of salt and lime.
Oh, get those electrolytes, babe.
Yep.